All right. Welcome back to the Rooted Conversations podcast. I am your host, Mitch Webb. Today I have Kate Godley, functional medicine doctor, my doctor for the last 10 years, good friend of mine. And we're going to unpack some of the black and white thoughts that we have here in the mind body space about things like nervous system regulation, functional medicine, and what I've learned through my journey, is that it's an and when we're in survival, it's really easy to be all or nothing, to say this is wrong and this is right and take a hard stance. And what I've learned is it requires more context and nuance, and that's what Kate's all about. She undersees the big picture. She understands trauma, and so much about the body that I couldn't even start to unpack that. But Kate was actually the first person to ever talk to me about trauma. I don't know if you remember that, Kate. She said, "Hey," 10 years ago. She said, "Hey, we're gonna have to talk about your childhood trauma at some point." Do you remember my response to that?
I think you laughed.
Yeah,
I think you laughed.
I
I
think
think
I
I
think
said,
I.
our family of origin sounds similar. So I,
It makes me laugh because like now here I am, facilitating this work, and it's been the one of the biggest portions that has helped me get to where I'm at now and feeling so much better. But I think what I said was, "How dare you?" And I'm sure I laughed, but I thought at the time, not saying it wasn't, certain things weren't, but I thought everything was roses. I had a roof over my head. I had college paid for and never went without a meal. And I'm like, man, what could have gone wrong? And not to shit on my family, but there's every family's going to have dysfunctional things and stuff that we're dealing with or not dealing with, and it certainly affects us. And not your, it's not the person's. It's not their, I don't know how to say it, it's not their problem, but it's ultimately their responsibility, eventually, to see these things, to unpack them. And I just have to say thank you for calling that out, calling a spade 10 years ago.
I'm glad you kept talking to me after that.
so let's start by, well, tell us a little bit about your practice, and I want to, after that I just want to get into what got you interested in functional medicine, and where you're at today.
Yeah, so our practice now, we see a lot of really complex patients with chronic fatigue and Lyme and mold illness and long COVID, and kind of like a lot of the diagnoses that you get maybe at like a primary care, but they're not sure what to do with you. Or they send you to a rheumatologist, and then a lot of the rheumatologists leave the clinic because they go work in research. So we have a lot of patients that are like, I wish I could see a rheumatologist, but I can't find a good one, or I can't find one with openings. So we do a lot of autoimmune stuff. We also see a lot of kids on the spectrum, kids that have had brain injuries, and sometimes the parents don't know why. Kids with epilepsy, kids that are like just full of toxins and different things that happened way too young, to their bodies. So that's a big part of our practice now too. But the reason I got into this is because my own thyroid, I have autoimmune thyroid disease, Hashimoto's. My own thyroid was really mismanaged. First of all, it took about 12 years for me to get diagnosed, even though I told everybody what was going on. Nobody really listened. I think they thought I was kind of a wimp, even though I'm the opposite, right? So I'm pretty stoic and I can put up with stuff for a long time.
Yep.
And and then I also had PCOS from age 16. And when I was 18, they told me that they were just gonna take out my ovaries. And I don't know if your listeners know, but they've renamed, in the last couple months, they've renamed PCOS to be PMOS, which is polymetabolic ovarian syndrome. And that's because a lot of what happens when you get cysts on your ovaries has to do with blood sugar regulation, stress, insulin resistance. It's not really about the ovaries. It's actually about what's going on with your blood sugar. So I intuitively understood that as like a really stubborn 18-year-old, and I told them I didn't want them to take out my ovaries.
Mm-hmm.
I was having like giant painful cysts that were like 7 to 9 centimeters, and then they would rupture, and then they were like, you know, scanning me to make sure it wasn't my appendix. And so this went on when I was 18. And then I realized there was a newsletter I could subscribe to before the internet. So once a month, I got a nutrition newsletter that was all about nutrition for patients with PCOS. And I started to learn a little bit more about what I could do if I didn't want to have surgery, which would have, by the way, put me into menopause and made sure I never had any kids.
Mm.
What else could I do? What was in my power? Because to be honest, when I was in that doctor's office and he was telling me to have surgery and have my ovaries taken out, I thought, what feels really icky about this is I don't have a say, and this is not a conversation.
Yeah.
This feels icky because it's very disempowering to be the patient when they're telling you what to do. And so I kind of vowed from that day forward, if I went into medicine, I would not let people feel that way in my presence if I had any say in it. So I majored in biochemistry in undergrad because I got really into the nutrition of the body and how does it affect us if we don't have enough omega-3s? What happens if we eat a lot of carbs and a lot of processed carbs? Like I was eating a lot of corn and corn syrup.
Mm.
And what happens to the metabolism? And then eventually when I got to PA school, I was like the person out of 60 people in PA school that packed my own lunch. I was always hydrated. I had a water bottle before anybody carried water bottles around. And so I became known as like the person who was in PA school, but also probably was going to do something a little alternative after PA school. Like I wasn't going to go into surgery or emergency medicine, even though I loved that stuff. That was not my own journey, right? My own journey was, I don't really think I need surgery right now. I think I just need to eat differently and exercise differently and sleep. I needed some sleep hygiene too. So by the time I was like 25 years old, as I was finishing PA school, I realized, number one, they don't teach you anything about nutrition in PA school. And PA school is pretty much like 80% of the med school curriculum condensed. So they don't teach med students nutrition either.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working. My first job as a PA was in HIV medicine. And in HIV, I learned from my patients that lifestyle changes really made a huge difference because I could see patients that were diagnosed the same year on the same medicine, but one of them had, gone to therapy, dealt with a lot of their traumas, found some spiritual healing, and was eating right and had stopped smoking cigarettes. And that person was doing great, and they were on the same exact medicine as the next patient who was not doing great and hadn't figured out all the lifestyle pieces. So it just reinforced, I think, what I already knew. But there was this parallel journey of like my career and then my personal journey. And I was continually not being diagnosed. I actually wasn't diagnosed with Hashimoto's until after my first kiddo was born when I was 28 years old. And it was bad. I don't, if anyone knows about thyroid numbers, my TSH was 14 and my T3, my free T3 was 0. It was actually 0. So I was already having swelling in my heart from the thyroid not working. I couldn't walk upstairs. My brain wasn't working, and I was supposed to care for a 6-month-old, so it was a disaster.
Wow.
So suffice to say, I trusted conventional medicine even less at that point. And then when I had my second kiddo, when I turned 30, it got worse. My thyroid issues got worse. Some of that was because the root cause hadn't been addressed yet. Like I was filled with mercury fillings. I had lived in a moldy home. I had gut dysbiosis. I had candida. None of those had been treated. They had just tried to give me some thyroid medicine. And I wasn't feeling better, even on the thyroid medicine. So at some point when around age 30, 31, so 12 years ago, I'm 42 now, I passed out with 2 little babies at home. And when they took me to the emergency room, my sodium was really low. And they were like, great news, you don't have a brain tumor, you're going to be fine. I was like, I'm not going to be fine. So that was when I really started diving into what is the research, like what causes autoimmune disease? Where does it come from? At that point, I had no cortisol. I had complete Addison's where my adrenal glands had stopped working. Why, right? Usually your adrenal glands don't stop working for no reason. There's trauma, there's chronic infections, there's different things that cause that to happen. And so then and that's why my sodium was low, because your adrenals control your sodium.
Hmm.
And so as I started piecing this all together, it was like, I have to use this in the clinic. By then I was working in family practice. I got to sit down and talk to people about this. Everything I'm learning on my own body, I want to share. I don't like gatekeeping information. I also don't want to overwhelm patients,
Hmm.
but I'm so excited that I figured out some of this that I just want to share some of it, you know? And then that led to eventually me opening the Functional Medicine Center in 2017. By then I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And, you know, in my mind, they were doing great. They seemed so much older. And so it was an interesting journey, you know, starting a clinic with 2 little kids. But here we are now, 9 years later. And yeah, and we're definitely treating, you know, people with Hashimoto's and thyroid disease, but much more than that. We're treating people with lupus and MS and Lou Gehrig's disease and all the different autoimmune, you know, syndromes. So,
Yeah, yeah, man, I love that. I would not call you a wimp. I'd say you're quite the fighter, and thank God I understand even more now because I knew pieces of that, but I don't didn't know the whole thing. And it just makes more sense why we resonated so much. I got burned quite a bit by conventional medicine, many different ways, and walked in with a lot of the ailments. And I didn't realize you started your practice in 2017. That's probably when we met because the car accident I was in was like 2019.
yeah, I
And
think
so,
I met you like the weekend you moved to Durham, though.
oh yeah,
Is that right? Yeah.
I remember coming to your yoga class,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was just me and you. And I came in like, oh, I love functional medicine. I love root cause medicine because you're bringing in all these different aspects. I think that's so important than just like throwing medication at it or giving you a diagnosis that makes you feel like you got to cut out your ovaries at 15. That's kind of crazy. But I remember I came in for the yoga class and we ended up talking for 3 hours. And I forgot that my wife was in the car, and I got in quite a bit of trouble about that. But we and
Mm-hmm.
you heard me like I had learned a lot working with some other folks that ultimately didn't support me going forward, and got kicked out of conventional medicine offices when they tried to drug test me. I think I always have been a cannabis fan, and they kicked me out because I was taking what's it called, cholesterol styramine.
Yes, yes,
It's a
cholestyramine. Yeah.
strong binder.
Binder.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I
For
came
mold.
in and they drug tested me, not telling me they were drug testing me. And so because I was on benzos for sleep and I was using the cannabis as a way to not have to take so much of that. And in that lab, he said, "This is this is the highest amount of cannabis we've ever seen," because I was eating a ton of it. He's like, "And you don't have any benzos, like you're done. You got 30 days to find another doctor, and we're cutting you off." And they had at the time I was taking what are the green monsters? They're like 1 milligram.
The gummies or the
The no the on the I guess on the street you would call a Klonopin, like a half milligram is like a yellow
oh,
one,
yeah,
and
yeah,
a
yeah.
big one is like 1 milligram, and I was taking like 5 of those a day, and I was trying to wean myself down, and but nobody would listen to me, and same thing. I had another time when I went on TRT, and the doctor gave me like 200 milligrams in one shot, now I take 100 milligrams spread out through 5 shots in a week, and this stuff takes context, and it takes getting to know someone and giving somebody an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
have a choice instead of like being told what to do. That did not work for me, and that's something I always felt supported. I always felt like I had a choice, always a conversation. And it was like, what was your favorite quote? It's like, it's 51-50. It's 51% Mitch and it's 50% Kate, 49% Kate or something like that. And
Yeah,
kind of
because
holding the hand through that process.
the lifestyle stuff is a lot of work, and I think people come into the functional medicine clinic occasionally still. It's getting better though, as people are understanding more. Expecting me to still give them that magic pill that's going to fix everything. And
Hmm.
just like when I started thyroid medicine, that was just the tip of the iceberg. That was not the magic thing that was going to make me feel better. It's the same thing with everybody I meet. I mean, desiccated adrenal, for example. We have a patient right now who she's got no cortisol, and we're replacing her cortisol using a desiccated adrenal gland because in her situation, that was the best choice. It did not magically get rid of all of her symptoms. And the reason is because usually when I meet people, there's 8 different things going on. It's
Yeah.
not just one. And the nervous system, of course, is at play. I wanted to add, you said something about yoga. So I became a yoga teacher because yoga really saved my life. Like
Mm.
when my TSH was 14 and I couldn't walk up the stairs, I had been an athlete and it was really messing with my mental health that I was so out of shape. So I thought, right? Really, I couldn't, it wasn't my fault. But,
Hmm.
and when I went to yoga class, I started going to the yoga garden in Apex was the first place I went to. I had never been around people that were doing movement in such a non-judgmental way.
Mm.
Like the entire first class, I just looked at everyone around me and was like, I'll never be able to do that, and I'll never be able to do that. And I noticed the thoughts in my head of how competitive I was. Meanwhile, the reason I was going there was because I wasn't well enough to do, go lift and go run and do the go play field hockey, do the stuff I wanted to do. And so I realized as I got to know yoga that it's a lot more of a philosophy and a
Hmm.
way of life and a way to be non-judgmental to myself.
I like that.
And I started meeting more people that were kind of like recovering type A women, especially at yoga. And I was like, oh, these are my people who realized that being type A was actually making us sick.
Hmm.
Like trying to be a perfectionist was actually making everything worse,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, it seems like it's a practice that continue to reveal more about ourselves and the real thing that's kind of driving a lot of the dysfunction underneath. I totally resonate with trying to compete with the person next to you. And I remember I used to go to this class. There was a bunch of 60-year-olds, and I was 25. I was probably in the best shape until now. I think I'm in better shape now, but I would try to compete with them, and they kicked my butt, inside and
Yeah.
out. But that's not what it's about. It's more about meeting yourself, and some of those patterns that are driving, someone who's stuck in survival or something like that. Um,
Yeah, just it taught me to breathe again. And then when I did my yoga teacher training was probably like 2014, 2015. My teacher had me read a book, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and it's basically like philosophy for living. It's like all about being a good person and being kind to yourself and like what really matters. Because at that time, it had been stripped down. I didn't have all of those other talents because my body wasn't doing well. So it was like really important for me to see that there was more to Kate, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what happens when that was me. I went from talking about being in the best shape to I couldn't walk. After the car accident, I couldn't, and even before that, I say best shape, but I was going to get back surgery. My back was hurting so bad from doing CrossFit and just pushing myself. And then after the car accident that I was in 2019, I couldn't walk. I had to set a timer for walking around the neighborhood, and if it was more than 15 minutes, that meant I was going to be laid out for 2 weeks. And so I had to surrender to trusting that I mean, I was happy to walk to the mailbox some days, and then when I got into, I mean, we did so much work, and I want to get into that in just a second about these different things that can cause, I don't know what to call it, I guess chronic illness. um, but when I got to the nervous system dysfunction stuff, and I started seeing a therapist that you sent me to, I accidentally forgot to set a timer and split wood for 45 minutes. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'd say most of the things that I've, the function that I've gotten back over the years, you say we want like a magic pill. We want it to happen right now. It's been slow as shit. I mean, um,
Hmm.
slow is fast. I mean, not like, man, that was slow and like shaming myself. It's more about setting expectations, because when healing doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen in a pill. It's a unraveling, a peeling back, and the food sensitivities that went away, the energy that came back, the um, digestive issues, and the like being able to have capacity for exercise again. think the more pressure we put on ourselves and with the more we hate ourselves for not being able to perform like we used to, 'cause that's what I hear from my clients all the time. I just want to get back to where I was. That's what's going to slow it down. That's kind of like anti-fuel. The more we can accept and allow and be willing to meet ourselves and experiment with different things, the onion unwinds
It
a
can
whole
be,
lot easier,
yeah.
a whole lot quicker.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you said the word push when we were talking before.
yeah.
Like, you know, we so my family of origin is Swedish, Irish, and English, and the Swedish is a very strong kind of thread in all of me and my I have two sisters. I'm the oldest of three girls, and we are very, very good at powering through.
Yeah.
And we were taught to be loyal and strong and never complain, right?
Hmm.
Well, when that woman walks into a doctor's office and says, like, hey, I feel like crap, you have to understand that on the other side of things, you're not being received the way you think you are because they don't know you and they don't know how stoic you are or what you've been through, right? And so I think we're working on that in medicine, but there's a lot more awareness now than when I graduated PA school in 2009. But like, you know, I see a lot of men too, but I see a lot of women patients, female patients with all these autoimmune things, and they should have been believed 15 to 20 years ago when their symptoms started, you know. But it's like symptoms can come and go. It can be fatigue. You can have joint pain. You can have a good week, and then you hit your luteal phase and you have a really hard week. And so the person really needs to listen. The practitioner really needs to listen. And I think that's kind of what makes us different at our clinic is we spend a lot of time trying to listen instead of just ordering a million blood tests on everybody. I don't agree with that kind of medicine because I think when we order a bunch of blood tests, but we haven't gotten the individual person's story, we end up diagnosing them with things that don't even really matter and focusing on all the wrong things. You know what I mean?
Oh, and for me, before getting to you guys' office, it felt like a needle in a haystack. Number one, nobody believed me that I felt as bad as I was saying. They would see a guy that's athletic and doing pretty good, but on the inside, my body was on fire. I had no idea how to understand what was going on, and they're over here accusing me of being a drug addict because I'm using some cannabis there. Um, Giving me medications to basically shut my body up, which is here's some autoimmune or here's some immune suppressants, here's some benzos. And I didn't know what those things were. I wasn't into health, And so when I came to functional medicine and they're like, brother, you got co-infections of Lyme, you got crazy inflammation, your hormones are a wreck. It feels like, oh my God, somebody's finally seeing me. And it also can reinforce that something's wrong with me. And I think that's where seeing the much bigger picture and being able to relate to someone instead of taking, okay, now we've got your diagnosis, we're going to nuke you with detox, with all these supplements, and you've got to be doing these different protocols and trying these diets that don't feel supportive to me, or maybe I don't want to do them. Then we take the choice away. We put all these assumptions and pressure on someone, and it kind of reinforces the same problem. And that's where I see you guys doing things differently. And that's like the end conversation, right? And so I guess where I was interested in kind of going next is we talked about these 8 different things that can be causing chronic illness, right? So it's easy for me to go black or white and say, hey, it's just the nervous system, it's just trauma. But what are some of the other like lifestyle and
Mm.
things that we should be looking at that can also be causing dysregulation? Because maybe it's not always trauma, maybe it's maybe that's part of the picture. But when we zoom out, like what are the top 5, 10 things that you see your clients dealing with that come in with chronic disease symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, I think toxins are big because toxins can be varied. Like I just tested a patient the other day who's got long COVID, and we feel like we're both a little frustrated that we haven't made more progress. And one of the toxins that came up really high is benzenes. And so that's not what we were expecting. Now he was a carpenter and he does work in construction, but he hasn't been around a lot of that in a long time. What's
What's a
interesting is
benzene?
benzene is like volatile organic substances. You'll
Mm.
breathe in the benzene, so like paint fumes or
Okay.
paint thinner, things like that.
Yeah.
Glues, a lot of adhesives, if you're a carpenter, have benzene. And so what we've realized is with him specifically, we're going to work a little bit more on some lymph support as well as binders and detox, more magnesium, and some binders that actually help with the benzene exposure. Whereas other patients, it might be mycotoxins or mold toxins. Like my oldest kiddo's 15, but when I was breastfeeding them, I had a lot of mercury in my breast milk. So with that kiddo, it was mercury
Hmm.
because my fillings were breaking down because I grind my teeth and I had a bunch of fillings, right? So in that specific case with my kiddo, I needed to realize it was mercury, So I think with every patient, the toxin conversation, again, asking a lot of questions to figure it out. We have a toxin exposure questionnaire we can do too. Seafood. I grew up eating a lot of seafood. My grandfather's a fisherman, so I had a lot of heavy metals. Um, and then pesticides, right? Like my dad got kidney cancer because he was on the farm, working on the farm while they would spray over their heads. They would spray pesticides back in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
And so, that was really important for him to kind of hone in on which was it, because for him, avoiding that pesticide in the future is really helpful, right? So people talk about toxins like it's like a giant problem and we don't know what to do with it. That's not true. If we can figure out which toxin it is, then we can do very specific individualized work. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yes.
Um, and then, of
And how would
course,
you be more specific? How do you find that out? Like, how do you be more specific instead of like nuking everything?
I mean, the first is just the questions. Like, if somebody had asked my dad, hey, what kind of work did you do in the past? They would find out he was exposed to a ton of pesticides, right? That
Mhm.
patient of mine who was a carpenter, I probably should have realized it was going to be benzenes.
Mhm.
Somebody like me, where it was mercury, that was pretty obvious because my mouth was full of mercury.
Yeah.
So asking those questions. But then there is, like Genova, one of the specialty labs does offer a urine test for all the toxins now. So you can get, send in a couple tubes of urine, you can get a ton of information. It's like a 20-page report. Because a lot of people think that signs of aging that they're having, issues with their memory or their stamina, or even, like libido issues, a lot of that can be toxin exposures. The toxins affect the vessels of the heart, and the vessels, of course,
Like
are
blood
everywhere.
vessel
So,
constriction and stuff like that. I mean, that could
exactly.
also be
So,
things like nicotine use, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like nicotine can help with certain issues, especially COVID.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
nicotine binds to the nicotinamide receptors in the brain, which actually bumps the spike protein out of the brain.
Hmm.
The problem is, how are you getting your nicotine? Are
Right.
you using a dip that's got a whole lot of other things in it? I lived in Kentucky for a year and I chewed tobacco, and there was some other junk in that in that tobacco. It wasn't just nicotine, right? There's 20,000 other compounds in tobacco. Um, so I think toxins is important, and I think that's where we kind of try to focus. We used to leave that towards the end, but we're changing that up a little bit as we're seeing more and more patients come in with really high toxin levels, even kids, right? Like
Yeah.
these kids that are 2 years old and they're having seizures, there's some toxins in the brain there.
Hmm.
Um, so that's probably important. The next thing I would say is these stealth infections. So I do a lot trying to figure out if the person has a chronic fungal infection like candida, or do they have candida in their gut? Do they have issues with viruses like Epstein-Barr or cytomegalovirus? I still have not seen a patient with long COVID who does not also have active Epstein-Barr. Epstein-Barr is really hard to get rid of, but it's not impossible. You have to know it's there though in order to get rid of it, right? And the treatment for Epstein-Barr virus is not just herbs that kill Epstein-Barr virus. The treatment also involves the story you've built around how sick you are and what is your
Oh,
sleep
God. Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Definitely.
people are embarrassed to tell me that they need to sleep 9 hours in order to get over Epstein-Barr. And I'm like, so sleep 9 hours. Like, what's the
Oh, I
problem
sleep.
here?
I
Well,
sleep 9 hours, 10 hours every single night. I love it.
right. But I mean, I've had situations in the clinic where somebody's like, no, I have to be able to survive on 6.5. And I'm like, why? Who wrote those rules? Right? Like,
There's your early childhood conditioning coming out right there.
exactly, exactly. So it's the trauma piece is kind of interlayered within some of the other things, but definitely stealth infections and Lyme disease can be a stealth infection. A lot of what people talk about on the internet as Lyme is actually really chronic fatigue
Mm.
and like inflammation of the brain. It can be Lyme, but it can also be Epstein-Barr. It can also be the co-infections like Bartonella and Babesia, which often are on the same tick. So, you
Yep.
know, um,
Had
I
those.
told you, yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
most people have more than one thing going on. And the problem with the immune system is it can fight strep, like strep in your gut, or candida, or something like a virus like Epstein-Barr. But the way the immune system is built, it's not good at fighting a fungus, a virus, and a bacteria all at the same time.
Mhm.
So
And
most of the
it's funny when
people,
you say that too, from like a nervous system perspective. When I think about a freeze, a functional freeze, a lot of people are in functional freeze these days. It's just overwhelming. Overwhelming. There's too many. Everything's coming in all at once. It could be emotions and maybe emotions is like the cherry on top because if I've got chronic infections, stealth or toxins, chronic infections, trauma, and all this stuff coming in at once, boom! Now my system's going into collapse, and everything's going to look. The body's not going to be able to fight these things off anymore.
yeah, yeah. And then honestly, I think the next thing that we talk about or that is important is probably hydration.
Mm.
And I know that sounds ridiculous, but when you are stressed out or you're exposed to a ton of toxins, you need a lot more clean water than you think you need,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
So if you're thirsty, you should be hydrating. I don't want people to overhydrate, but if I'm seeing a 200-pound man for a physical, he needs to be drinking probably 110 ounces of water.
Which is like, how
More.
much is that? I mean, I probably have, I'm 200 pounds, let's say, somewhere around there, 190, 200 pounds. I probably have a gallon and a half of water a day. Now, I'm in the sauna quite a bit. I'm working out,
Right,
I'm
right.
outside. And I'd also say, how big is electrolytes? Those get pushed quite a bit these days. Are you a fan? Are you not a fan?
Similarly, it depends on the person and which ones they need. When we talk about electrolytes, we're talking about sodium, potassium, and magnesium. I saw a patient the other day. She's a 60-year-old Black woman and her blood pressure runs high. And I said, electrolytes for you is potassium and magnesium in your water. You're not going to add extra sodium because you're genetically inclined to have high blood pressure. And
Hmm.
so we're going to talk about which electrolytes are good for you. For example, Jaro makes two now that are potassium electrolyte based,
Oh,
not
I didn't know
sodium.
that. I didn't know that.
They make like a lime watermelon and then they make an orange one. And it's
It's
only,
awesome that you're saying that because when you test, there's so much information. I did a lot of health coaching and I didn't know how to approach some of the high blood pressure stuff because you hear some people say, hey, high blood pressure can be driven by sodium deficiency. And other people say, hey, you got to stay away from sodium and it's going to be more potassium, magnesium. And the only way you're really going to know that, I hate this thing of test, don't guess because somebody can get into a cycle of like obsessing over that. Um, and it's super important to be able to know what's going on for your body, and then you can check something and maybe do it 6 months or a year later and see how you're responding. And the symptoms are going to kind of tell us too.
yeah. And I mean, in the case of that specific patient, her blood pressure's come down a lot since she started working with me because we are properly treating her thyroid. She needed some nature thyroid in, or actually it's NP thyroid because nature thyroid's gone now, but she
Yeah.
needed NP or Armor in with her levo. She also needed cortisol support. And when she didn't have the cortisol support on board, for her it was adaptogens like ashwagandha and rhodiola. If she didn't have that on board, her sodium would drop low. So
Hmm.
again, keep in mind that yes, high sodium can cause high blood pressure, but it's not that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Low blood pressure is also a problem. And a lot of people with high blood pressure are running really high cortisol. Does that
Hmm.
make sense? And so
Oh
if we
yeah.
can address their cortisol and help support their body, their adrenal glands, your adrenal glands are also supposed to save vitamin C from your diet. And the problem is we can't make vitamin C. So our body can't make it. You have to get it from your diet and save it. If your adrenal glands aren't working, you also need to take in a lot more vitamin C than somebody who's got functioning adrenal glands.
Hmm.
Um, and it's all a matter of here's where you are right now, right? So I explained that when I first met her 4 years ago. Your job is super stressful. Your sleep is her sleep was terrible. She was getting like 5 minutes of deep sleep in a night, partially because she couldn't fall asleep, partially because she was also in menopause and having hot flashes. So in that case, we also had to use some estrogen, right? So it's the person is like a puzzle. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And as we're putting the pieces together, I explain the best I can what we're doing because it is their information, it's their body, right? Like it would be kind of mean of me to just start piling these things on and then not explain to her why we're doing them. Because what the goal, the ultimate goal is for her to not need me, for her to be out on her own in the future. We get her to a baseline healthy spot. And then a year from now, something happens and she realizes, oh, I need more vitamin C right now, or oh, I need to take a little bit of rhodiola today, like,
Putting the
so we're
power
trying
back
to,
in the patient's hands to know how to
yeah,
know,
it's like,
to understand their body and be able to respond to it.
right. It's like parenting. I am super hopeful that my 15-year-old will not need me in 3 years. Like I'm super,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to work myself out of a job, right? When
Yeah.
I when I walk inside, I go, "Hey, how's that business plan going for that business you're starting this summer?" I don't write the business plan. I help the person with it. It's
So
just
many helping professions get a bad rap because it seems like they just want that monthly payment. They want to get put that check in the mail or whatever it is, and it like put a hook in you and keep you coming back for more. And it's so refreshing to hear. No, I want to spend time with you as long as you need it, and hope that you can be self sustainable going forward. I think that's the ultimate goal that we want to give anybody that's working with us.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody graduates from working with me and they just want to be friends and hang out and we can go get tea, great. Like that's the goal.
Yeah.
Everybody for us all to be kind of on the same level of health and healing.
Yeah,
And
and
I
but
never,
in the past, it felt like, especially with the what do I call it, the general practitioner that I worked with, it felt like you're talking to God or something, and it's like, hey, I know a little bit of information, and we're going to come back to that information in a minute and talk about that. But
yeah,
it's like if
yeah.
we're just you know assuming this person doesn't know what they're talking about, they don't have a brain, like you're disempowering them already from the jump.
And I know from my own journey, I can feel things that are going on in my body that sometimes I don't even have the words for yet, right? And so if I have some information on how to support myself, that's invaluable, right?
Yep.
Like going to someone else to say, "Can you help me with this? I don't know what to do." That's hard for me. Maybe that's also the Swedish stubbornness,
Yeah.
but like it's hard sometimes, and it feels a little bit like a cripple, similar to when you have to use Klonopin for sleep. You don't want to be crippled by this thing or have to use this crutch, so to speak, right?
Right.
You want to be able to sleep without it, right? I want to
Right.
be able to live my life without having to run to the doctor every month. That's what
Mhm.
I want.
Mhm.
So,
And I'll
um,
say with that right there, like people ask me about medications a lot when they've got anxiety, and I use Klonopin off and on for a decade or two. I haven't used it in like a year, and I was super grateful to have that. And I think it's super important to work with whatever is underlying. We've talked about a bunch of different those things that could be driving that. And my experience with it, I was always really scared that I was going to be on it forever. My experience with it was one day I just stopped taking it, and because I had done a lot of the things that she's talking about, I've done that work on myself, and I just got to a place where, for a couple of months before I was ready to come off, I was like, I got this feeling that I don't need to take it anymore. And when I was ready to trust that, there is a little bit of wobbly, but I did not have these big reactions that you see a lot of people that are going cold turkey. And I'm not saying that's wrong either. I'm not saying either one is wrong. I'm just saying from my own experience, it wasn't as scary as I thought it was. I'm thankful that I had it. I would never shame anybody that was on it. And when it was time to come off, my body just did it. And I think the more we can trust and work with a professional, Kate was always reassuring me, like, Mitch, you're taking like half of a pill. And I think my wife thought that if she replaced it with a sugar pill at some point, that I would have been okay. And it supported my body when I really needed it. And now I don't think I'll need that again.
Yeah, I mean, it's how I feel about my thyroid medication. Like I'm taking thyroid hormone. I've been taking it, right? There's a stigma around needing to take a certain medicine, but I reject that stigma in when it comes to everything. I just think you are an individual, and wherever you are at this moment in time is what we're going to do to help support you. So
Hmm.
like when I look at my thyroid medicine in the morning before I take it, I say thank you.
Yeah,
I force myself to be like, you and I are on the same team. Thank you so much.
I like
Because
that.
if instead I'm judging myself for quote still being on this thyroid medicine, then I'm going to feel worse, and it's not going to support me the way that it needs to. And that is my habit. The last thing I was going to add in terms of like we talked about toxins and infections and hydration, I was actually going to add habits,
Yeah.
because maybe a habit is as soon as I wake up in the morning, I get on my phone. Maybe a habit is I don't get on my phone right away, but I walk into the kitchen and I make my coffee. Maybe I don't get sunlight in my eyes for the first like 5 hours I'm awake, right? That's a
Yeah.
habit that is affecting my well-being because we know the sunlight in your eyes in the morning is going to help you make melatonin at night,
Hmm.
right? So a lot of people are grabbing melatonin at Walgreens or CVS. Nothing wrong with that if that's what they need at that time, but they should have the information in their pocket that says, hey, if you want to go outside right now and work on that habit, you will be able to get off of the melatonin when you want to, when you're ready to. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yep.
So we work a lot on those habits, and actually habits includes like 95% of what we think, because my thoughts are going to be the same thoughts I had yesterday, 95% of those thoughts,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
So just catching ourselves and being a little bit more aware. And I brought this up because we're doing a book club at the clinic, on the book Anchored by Deb Dana on polyvagal theory. And I brought this up. We were talking about chapter 2, and I started telling people that I had this moment in the car where I caught myself having a thought. Okay, my daughter's doing this. That means she's going back into pandas. That means she's having a flare. That means she's not doing well. And I caught the thought and I dropped her off at wherever she was going. And I sat in the car for 1 minute. I'm not joking. And I did what's called the Byron Katie method. I said to myself, is that thought true? Is it
Hmm. Oh,
absolutely
yeah.
true?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel when you have that thought? Where is it in your body? So it's a little bit of somatics at the same time.
Hmm.
And then I was like, what's the opposite of that thought, Kate? What is the opposite of that thought? And how does that feel? And I was like, huh, so interesting. I was able to free myself from this, like I consider it like a mental prison when
Yep.
you think or you worry about the same things today as you worried about yesterday.
Oh, it's
And
completely unconscious, and it kept us safe until we build the capacity to see that and choose different. And I love the little analogy, the Byron Katie thing, because it just gives us a different perception because we do not heal or change through force. We change through having new experiences. And instead of, if I can see the assumption and how that I get tense in my body when I feel that, but I can go to the opposite. What I'm curious what the opposite was.
the opposite is she's having a hard day and everybody has a hard day. And she actually doesn't have pandas again. She's very healthy.
So now
This kid,
you've got compassion, empathy, and acceptance. And to
yeah.
me, that feels a whole lot lighter than she's got pandas again. Obviously, that's you're trying to protect her and keep her safe, but that's a story, and it needs to be challenged. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means, well, let's look at this from a different way. And I think the body is always going to let us know if we can slow down and we learn how to be that observer. Am I going to
It's
constrict to this and it feels like yucky, or does this feel like, do I take a deep breath? And that's the little signs that I'm always looking for when I'm working with clients because we just don't get taught how to pay attention to that stuff when we're younger.
and if you had told me, when she was born 12 and a half years ago, like hey, you're going to catch yourself having this thought, but you're going to be able to redirect it. You're going to salvage your afternoon. You're going to get
Yeah.
home and you're going to walk barefoot in your garden. Then you're not going to sit there and worry about her all the time. I wouldn't have believed you because I was so wired for my habit was worrying. I was addicted to it.
Oh
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
That's what kept us. That's thank God we had worrying in environments growing up, because if we didn't do that, that meant we were gonna, whatever it meant, it meant danger, it meant a threat. And so that survival response works until we didn't. And now we realize, oh, I'm not in that early environment. I am safe and I do have a choice. And when I make the choice that keeps me dysregulated for the rest of the day versus the one that allows me to accept and move on and enjoy walking in the garden barefoot, I think it's easy to make that decision.
Yeah, and I was sharing this story with my patients because I don't want you all to think like that I'm not walking this with you. Like I am also learning as I go, but I learned a lot that day. I was like, "Hey, number one, good job picking up on that thought because you often have that thought and you don't notice you're having it, Kate, right?"
Oh yeah.
And then, and then so it was really interesting because we were having this whole talk about it. And one of my patients said, you make it sound like this healing journey is just mind over matter. And I was like, huh, that's so interesting. I don't think it's just, quote, mind over matter, but I don't think our mind chemistry, biochemistry, is disconnected from our body. I think
No.
it's all. So as soon as I thought about the possibility that maybe my initial worry wasn't a guarantee, as soon as I allowed myself to have the opposite thought, all of the chemistry in my body changed.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah. You're coming out of
felt
survival.
it. Right. And then, the thyroid hormone that I'd taken that morning worked better.
Oh yeah.
And then and the zinc or the water I drank was actually more nourishing. Like it shifted all of the physical things that I'm doing. It shifted them because I changed the thought.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I
Oh,
think
it's
it's so
crazy.
cool because we can control so much, or I shouldn't say control. We can dictate and guide our healing,
Support.
including support our mental health, and that allows all of the physical things we're taking and doing to actually work better,
And that's kind of going back to my original. I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. I was trying to struggling with the words, to be honest. And it's like there's fixing and forcing and figuring it out and all the F's words, right? Or there's support. And that's where we can go black or white and we can say, oh man, everything is fixing it. Taking a supplement in the morning, walking barefoot, getting sunlight. I can see how I have definitely done the shadow side of that and feel like I got to control it. And if I didn't do it, I'm in danger. That's more obsessive compulsive stuff. But can we move into observing and supporting, being patient with and loving our body instead of this old way? But we really got to do the work to slow down and see that, to be able to distinguish. You're not going to get it right away. And
Yeah.
it kind of goes into when we're talking about all these things that can kind of cause chronic illness. I think about the same thing. And I imagine I'm going to get your take on this. Like I realized doing that, I've got some great teachers in the nervous system world, and I don't have to fix and figure them out. Like their nervous system is the map, and I can trust that one door is going to open. Not that I'm always going to do parts work, or I'm going to do somatics, or we're going to build capacity today, or we're going to sit with this. If I come in with an agenda, that is taking me right out of my body. I feel gross. But the door always opens. It's typically
Yeah.
behavior, words, vocabulary, whatever the words they're using. Um, it's a sensation. It's a symptom. Like it's and so I don't have to figure it out. But if I can trust and meet the moment, I can trust that their nervous system is gonna show me the right door for today. And if I come in with an agenda, imagine if you come in and you're like, hey, I got your labs, and we're gonna work on your toxins. We're gonna work on your habits next, and then we're gonna do trauma down here, and then hydration. Imagine that is not gonna kick off. Like, how do you? It seems so overwhelming because I don't know your world, but that's the only way that I can compare it. Is like the door
Yeah.
is always going to be there if I'm willing to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some patients really want that. They really want, like, well, give me the list of like the 18
It's all the
things you're going
men.
to
It's all the
do.
men that want that, right?
Sometimes it's also women on the spectrum.
Yeah.
It's also women on the spectrum sometimes, my neurodivergent clientele. And it's because in order to trust me, they want to know what is the future plan.
They want
And
certainty.
I'm like, I don't mind telling you and typing it all out, but I want you to know that there's a little bit of what I'm doing that's an art. It's not just
100%.
biochemistry, right? And so when I brought up, hey, you tested positive for gluten allergy, I felt the whole energy in this room change. And I actually think you should just keep eating gluten right now.
Yeah, yeah. No,
And
that's huge.
they're like, what? You just said it's bad for me. I'm like, that's not what I said.
You got bigger
I,
fish to fry, I imagine.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I said that's just one detail. And what I felt from you was that that's going to cause more stress. And I
Mhm.
want you to know that this journey of functional medicine should not cause you more stress.
Mhm.
And that is a first of all, it shouldn't be so expensive that you're broke in here, but also it should not cause you more stress that I'm asking you to do certain things. So, that's a balance because I have to charge enough to keep the lights on in the clinic, but I also feel like, a lot of patients of all different income levels are in our clinic making sacrifices too. And then the other side of that, the how to break it down for them, we also do have a coach. So like sometimes, I'm giving them a plan and they need a little bit more help implementing the plan. But I'm not assigning them the plan without their input, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
I might say, hey, there's pumpkin seeds have zinc, right? Like, what does it feel like to eat a tablespoon of pumpkin seeds every day? And some patients are like, that's a great idea, you know? And then other patients are like, I'm super busy to have to remember the pumpkin seeds right now. I'm just being honest, that's not going to happen. I'm like, no problem. We're
Yeah.
going to give you a capsule that you take at dinner, and you're just going
Yep.
to leave that right on the dinner table, you
Yep.
know?
I love that. And like what I think about that or what I see when I'm working with people is the same thing. And I've had this experience with you a million times where it's like we're looking for the hell yes, not the okay, I guess I'll do that. I mean, because you come in type A, person that comes in, I'm willing to do anything. Tell me what I do, I'm going to do it. That force mentality. I know you're smiling because you get that. But it's like, so I guess I'll do it. I'll suck it up and restrict one more thing. But if it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hell yeah, I'll do that. Like for me, a big thing for me was I didn't like as many later in my journey in the beginning give me all the supplements. I think I walked in with like a trash bag full of them. But eventually I learned
Hmm.
less is more for me. And if I have a nutrient we want to work on, like tell me some foods that support that, and then I'll light up. Oh yeah, I like that. I can eat more of that, and that works a whole lot more than just telling somebody, you sending somebody home with a plan that doesn't fit their choices.
And that's been my personal journey too, is like there's times when, like I got really sick. I got shingles in March and I had to take like 3 grams of lysine 3 times a day to get through that because it hurt.
Amino
And
acid, is that is?
and
Yeah.
it opposes arginine. Arginine's in chocolate. If you eat chocolate, you're going to make the shingles worse. So that was
Oh,
driving
no.
me nuts already. So I was angry. I was pissed that I couldn't have
I got a
chocolate.
question there. Would milk chocolate work there instead of like dark chocolate because it's not real chocolate?
No, I mean,
Okay.
unless it was like completely no cocoa, but
I don't think that would be on
anyway,
Kate's list.
yeah, I know, right? So, but for me, okay, every time something happens to me, it's so that I can learn about it and experience it so I can help some other people.
A
And
hundred
so
percent.
I was sitting there going to Josh, how come I got shingles? I don't understand. I'm doing all these things right. And he's like literally just walking by me, not saying anything. And I'm sitting at the table like, I don't understand why I got shingles. I'm 42. Why did I get shingles? What's going on? I've never had shingles. Like, was I stressed? I didn't think I was stressed. Did I miss something? What did I miss? And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Whatever is going on right now with your nervous system, that's just showing you what you needed to hear, right? Like,
Yeah.
first of all, you're trying to fix every little thing. The shingles is also a sign that you need to slow down and sleep. Could you please slow down and sleep?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then, and then I sort of put the pieces together later when I was feeling better. But I realized that um, at that moment I needed to take some supplements. Now I've been off most things except magnesium for like the last year, but I really needed to take some lysine to get me through. And that's okay. It was great. It got me through. I added in some herbs for shingles and I got through it. And then what would happen was I stopped everything after like 2 weeks, and by Friday of my work week, the pain would start coming back. So that was again, Kate,
Okay.
how are
Yeah.
you? Yeah, thank you for that sign. It's like I would say to my body, thank you for that sign. I'm not going to go see friends tonight. I'm going to bed. I'm going to go take my herbs. I'm going to go do my stuff. Like, because I was pushing myself really hard at work and I had a bunch of new patients coming in that were really sick. Me overextending myself, though, was not going to help these people. Right. So, lesson learned again. There's some lessons that I have to learn a million times before I'm going to get them.
You and me both, sister. And it's funny, with this work, it is crazy to me. 'Cause I feel like we're kind of doing the same thing. You're doing it from a functional medicine side. We're kind of having the same conversation. They're all intertwined, just like we said. Um, it's like I will learn something new that is completely unconscious. It's a habit, it's a behavior, it's an old trauma, it's a conditioning, whatever that is. And
Hmm.
and it will be revelatory for me. I'll move through it. There's grief, there's anger, all the things that come with that. And then like the next day I'll have a client ask me the same question and I have no and it just and I just start I try not to laugh because I'm like, this is so crazy. And that's what I've learned through one of my mentors. Like, you will get people that are exactly like you until you heal your stuff. I don't know if we ever actually heal, but like as we're moving through that, we're learning the lesson. We're able to pass that down. And I think that's a big part of. I think that means you're in alignment with who you are and the clients you're
Hmm.
working with.
And even the word heal is kind of implying that
Something's
I'm
wrong.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even when I first met you, Mitch, I remember you talking about like Lyme and mold and heavy metals and your autoimmune stuff. And I was just looking at you thinking, does he see what I see? Does he see like that there is this like life force in him that is definitely not going to quit? Like,
Mhm.
because sometimes you can look at people and see the beauty in people. And gosh, when I think about every opportunity I've had since 2009 to meet new patients right where they are, meet them where they are, show them some compassion, I think sometimes me witnessing them and showing compassion was way more valuable than whatever supplement or medicine I prescribed.
Absolutely.
Like I think about some of my HIV patients that nobody wanted to go near these patients. I worked with unhoused people and I would sit there with them and just talk to them about life, right? It's like we all just need to know that number one, we're supported and cared for. And we have so much more in common than we do not, right? Like that's what our world needs right now is like more just witnessing each other and helping each other out in that way.
Oh yeah, understanding and accepting the person in front of us instead of making them feel like they're got a 10-minute visit and they got to get out of there and they're just like another cod in the wheel. I think
Yeah.
I used to have to plan for like 2 hours because we'd end up just chatting for through
Yeah.
all this stuff. Okay, I got something. We got a little bit more time left. How much has social media made your job hard? And the thing that pops into my head immediately is the biohacking stuff, which I can also say it's good and it's bad, but I think it leans more into the fixing, and then also like restrictive diets that are meant to be temporary. I remember myself thinking that if I didn't go down to just meat and salt, that I wasn't going to heal my gut, and that I needed more restriction. I think that's what we see on social media is restriction and control. How much has that made your job hard?
Yeah, let me start with the second part first because I saw a patient yesterday who's doing carnivore. And um, what I have noticed, and I don't know that I can completely explain the connection yet, I have noticed that a lot of people that come in and they are only able to eat meat. If they eat anything else, they feel like garbage. They have a lot of emotional trauma. They have like some stuff that's sitting there that maybe they could work through, but they haven't addressed it yet, and they may not be ready to address it, right? And so is that is that maybe because like the lectins or the fibers or the prebiotics all need the microbiome to be active, and your gut, your microbiome's not going to start digesting all those fibers and those other things that are not meat, like if you're so distracted by this stressor over here, right? Like because especially men I see, they do this thing where they think, oh, I just compartmentalize that. I just put that over here. I'm going through something that's super stressful, but it's not affecting my digestion because I just put it over here. I just moved it over, right? And I'm like, I think it might be affecting your digestion, right?
Yeah.
So, and it makes sense because if our body doesn't know the difference between a physical stress and a psychological stress. So our biochemistry looks the same if we are sprinting away from the saber-toothed tiger and trying to get away versus if we're having a big issue with our wife who is going through all this stuff and we don't know how to support her and we feel really lost,
And
like
now we have saber-tooth tigers everywhere, from the email notifications to the social media to politics to, I mean, you
right,
name it.
right, right. There's lots of things that are designed to make us scared, to make
Mhm.
us, and to keep us engaged because we're afraid.
So
Why
that we
don't you
can
go ahead?
be controlled.
Yeah, which kind of brings us to the first part is like, I've seen on social media, like, come get this full body scan. Come get this full body scan to make sure you don't have cancer.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I have so many issues with this on so many levels. But the first is we develop malignant cells, we develop cancer cells every 24 hours, and the immune system cleans them up. The immune system cleans them up and does what it's supposed to do to prevent us from getting cancer every 24 hours. It's like a brush that comes through and sweeps away all the garbage, right? Same thing with autoimmunity. Every time, like sometime between 2 and 6 a.m., the cortisol rising actually tells the immune system, go ahead and turn off all the autoantibodies that you accidentally created,
Hmm.
right? So there is a beautiful checks and balances that works in our system. People that get, like pancreatic cancer, something went wrong in that checks and balances, and it's usually related to stress and antioxidants and their metabolism having a big issue, like a big issue metabolizing sugar, right? And so I bring that up because I would much prefer people spent the money and the time and the energy understanding how to prevent all different forms of cancer, but not from a fear-based way, more from like a, hey, the more antioxidants I take in and the more I lower my stress, the less likely I am to get cancer, right?
Mhm.
The more sunlight I get, the better my vitamin D is, the less likely I am to get cancer. Just like putting those things together. People talk about full body scans looking for tumors like they are prevention. That's not actually prevention. If we're scanning your body looking for a tumor that's already there, you've already got a problem. Does that make sense? And so
Well, I mean,
it,
also, if you're, what's the book with the girl who constantly is afraid she's going to get cancer and eventually she gets it? She has a massive comeback, but it's basically like what I focus on, I attract.
yeah, that's true. And sometimes I think people do have an intuition, like people really know from like a Buddhist perspective, I can tell that some people really know how this cycle is going to go for them. But are you creating that because you're so worried about it? I don't know.
And
I
that's
don't
kind of what we
know.
were talking about before we come on. What is hypervigilance and what is intuition? I think a lot of times,
Yeah.
I think intuition is one of the biggest part of any helping. What am I trying to say? Industry or person that's helping other people. And if it's missing, you're missing a big part. But I think it's really easy to confuse the two.
Yeah. What I've learned is I believe in the biochemistry because I understand it, I can see it, I can work it all out. But I've also experienced so many times in my life when my deceased grandmother came to talk to me, or one of my spirit guides came to tell me something, and I ignored it, and then later was like, oops, that was actually like a real thing, Kate. You weren't feeling anxious. You actually, like, for example, when my oldest got type 1 diabetes at age 1, my grandmother had come to me 4 days before and been like, hey, this kid smells like diabetes. And I had gone over and been like, oh, it's so weird. You smell like type 1 diabetes, but you don't have type 1 diabetes. And the next thing you know, we're in the hospital, like, and I look back on that and I'm like, was I anxious that he was going to get diabetes? I'm like, no, I wasn't. That hadn't even occurred to me. I was just getting a download from whatever other dimension I can't see and don't understand, right? But most people I think acknowledge, like, there's a lot of electromagnetic stuff going on that we can't see, that we don't understand, whether that's whatever you call that, like, and so all that to say, when I've looked back on it, I've been able to tease out, like, what was a message, or what was intuition versus what was anxiety, or I guess hypervigilance is a better word. I don't like the word anxiety, but hypervigilance is definitely it's made worse by social media. Part
Absolutely.
of the problem is, like, I saw a message the other day from somebody who said, hey, just like crowd surfing, asking for help. I've got this rash on my face, right? Like, I'm in perimenopause and I have this rash on my face. And then like 50 people commented they were diagnosed with mast cell disorder. They have MCAS. This person must have it too. She needs to take quercetin, and she also needs to take, NAC, and she's got to take nettles, and she might want to try an antihistamine, and
Oh
all
my
of
God.
this stuff. And meanwhile, I was backing up and thinking, first of all, MCAS is really not understood in terms of, there's a spectrum of mast cells and how they behave, and histamines don't always behave in one person the way they do in the next person, and there's not a one size fits all way to fix that, right? So also, what the person had going on might have been much simpler than that. And then all of these strangers were telling them their story. So I don't think it's a bad thing that people are connecting and sharing their stories. I think the problem is when people latch on to an individual story and they assume that their journey is going to be exactly the same,
Absolutely.
right?
I was going to come back to the same point. I think it's good that people are talking, that they're interested in looking and understanding more about the body and how to support themselves. And then there's a really dark side of that. I went down many of those rabbit holes, and that's where you got to
Right.
have somebody on your side that can help bring your feet back down to earth, look at a bigger picture, and explore some of those things you're interested. Some of those things may be helpful for you, but can we separate fear from, what the next step is?
Yeah, and if somebody comes to me and says, like, I had two patients in the last couple of months say, like, hey, I did some reading, I think I have POTS, right? And I'm like, okay, so you have this, like, changes in your blood pressure. Your blood pressure go in the wrong direction. When you go from sitting to standing, your blood pressure is supposed to go up, and it's going down instead. Okay, that's good information for us to have, but that's not a diagnosis, in my opinion, that's actually helpful, because that's just your body giving us signs. Hey, something's not right with the vessels changing shape, with the hormones, with the sodium. There's a bunch of things happening here. So it's helpful that the person read about POTS and came in and told me, I think I have POTS. I'm like, oh yeah, I agree. You have POTS. But guess what? That's not where the conversation ends. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of things that have caused that. Similarly, fibromyalgia. Like, I had a patient come in and say, do you think it could be fibromyalgia? And I'm like, yeah, but what does that mean to you? I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I don't think that helps us, because
Yeah.
you have pain and you have inflammation, and emotional triggers really affect your pain. But now what do we do? Now, this is where the work starts, when we actually get to, like, pull back layers and see, for this specific person, what is causing it,
Yeah, and
right?
that's why people need someone like you that can zoom out, see the big picture instead of going down these. It almost seems like simple, maybe a solution for someone else, but it's like, hey, there's a lot bigger picture here going on than you need to take some quercetin.
Right.
Like sure, that may be part of the picture, but this thing over here is way bigger. It's like I see the pie where it says, this is what I know, this is what I think I don't know. This is, and not to shame someone and say, like, hey, don't go try to understand what's going on and learn. It's just get somebody in your corner that's been there, that's been through it. Like it's kind of like a therapist that can prescribe medication that's never done the work themselves, and they're just handing out scripts for antidepressants. Well, yeah, sure, that may be helpful in this situation, but how can you, if you haven't done the work yourself, you haven't been there, how can you expect to meet someone in the depth that they need in this critical moment in their life?
And something like fibromyalgia is a good example. There are some pharmaceuticals, but in general, there's not a cure. So
Right.
now the person in front of me assumes they're going to be disabled for the rest of their life until
Yeah.
I say, hey, I was 23 when they told me I had fibromyalgia. Look at me now. I have shed that as a diagnosis because I reject it. But the reason I shed it and I got to reject it is because of all of the nervous system work that I did to figure out, why was I feeling so much pain? What was going on with the pain? And some of it for me, probably 90% of that diagnosis for me was just working through trauma and doing things like EMDR or ecstatic dance, or, to be honest, lifting weights. For me, in the last 2 years, learning how to lift correctly has moved so much crap out of my body because I have somehow used the lifting as like a therapy. I think a
Yep.
lot of people do, right? It doesn't mean I'm addicted to it, but it feels really good to step away and feel different patterns and feel like this journey, I keep moving along the path. I'm not stuck, you
Oh yeah,
know?
I mean it for
Um,
me it showed me, hey, you're not broken, you're not weak. It gives me an outlet to get out some of that sympathetic activation. It's a routine. It's something that helps me turn my brain off, turn the phone off, get into my body and love my body, meet my body where it's at that day. I had a client the other day that reached out, and a big thing that we work on is instead of waiting for the symptoms to pass to engage and enjoy life, we do it with, we get clear on what are my values and what do I care about, and can I do what I love to do with the capacity I have with the symptoms. And so he's going, hey, am I not
right.
doing the work if I don't go to the gym today because I haven't slept for 3 days? And I'm like, you're always doing the work. Can you
Yeah.
give yourself, can you actually attune to yourself? Yeah. So you want to go to the gym today, go to the fucking gym. But when you get there, like, what is your capacity? And it's 50% okay today. Is walking on the treadmill okay?
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
you want to go out in nature. And the more we can accept and meet ourselves and do what we love with the symptom, that's what got rid of my chronic fatigue, was just loving myself and trusting my body. And I think some type of movement practice is great. Whatever that, I mean, whether it's qigong, it's yoga, it's tai chi, it's lifting weights, a combination. I don't think the body wants to lift weights every day. Just like sometimes it wants to rest. And can we build enough capacity to meet that, to observe that, and give ourselves what we need? I think that's a huge recipe for healing.
Yeah, I was thinking about Saturday. I went to the gym and I was really tired. We had gone to the Dave Matthews concert Friday night and then had friends over after. I don't stay up past 8 o'clock. Like it was so. So it's like 11 a.m. on Saturday, and I'm texting my daughter to see if she needs a ride, and she's like, "No, I'm good." And then I was like, "You know what? I'm done. Like I've been here. I did my squat and my bench press. I'm not deadlifting today, even though deadlifting's my favorite part.
Me
But
too.
I felt my body getting sleepy, and I
Mhm.
was like, wow, I really need a nap. Like Kate of when I had little kids, or Kate in PA school, would never have taken a nap.
Yeah.
Nap was like I would judge myself for being tired. Like what
Yeah.
the heck? We're
Yeah.
just humans. We're all just human beings, right? So I went home and took a nap, and what was so interesting is I was really sore Sunday, as if I had deadlifted. So obviously my body needed. So
Delayed onset muscle soreness. And to kind of add to that, if you get to the gym, one of the things I'll do is, say I had fatigue and I'm working with that and I'm going to the gym. Well, I may do my warm up and I'm like, I feel that tiredness. Because what happens for me, if I had fatigue, I kind of look at it as a relationship with the body. So instead of like saying, hey, we're going to go do this gym thing, you might touch the gym door and you're like, not today. You may do your warm up, not today. I was getting sick like 2 months ago and I couldn't tell, is today a day I want to lift? And I did my warm up and it was like, hell no. And so I unracked the weight and I went and took a nap because, and that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. Like that's what's such a big part of this is, can we just listen to our body? Can we be aware? So many of us are just living in our head, thinking our way to safety, like intellectualizing. And a big, journey is from the brain to the heart to grow that capacity to feel and attune. And that's what so many of our nervous systems are craving.
And so much of burnout, when I talk to other medical providers, I teach a class for other medical providers on burnout. It is them ignoring the signs that their body's giving them, right? They are pushing, 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 and of course that's going to cause burnout because we're living in a way that is not what we need, what our bodies need and what our nervous systems are asking for. So, but I think just to come back to the social media thing, I think that's where people probably should practice or might want to try. I hate the word should. Might want to try practicing a little bit of checking in. Like if you're on Facebook and you went on there to ask a question, my oldest didn't know what time they had to be at graduation practice today. Like I go on to ask one question, but then what happens next, right?
Get a lot of feedback you don't want.
Or I'm like reading all the other posts and I'm like, how did I get here, right? Like, so just checking in with your body or checking in or setting a timer or doing something like that. I don't think social media for like the kind of work that you and I do, I don't think it's a bad thing to be out there and being able to spread our message. But I will tell you, I think the first 8 years the clinic was open, we only ever had word of mouth referrals. Anybody that Googled us and found us was like, I don't know that person yet. I don't really want to go there, which is it speaks volumes. Like when we're healing kind of as a community and all together, the social media stuff is less important. Also, keep in mind, in some of the groups that exist for people who are chronically ill, like our kids with PANS Pandas, the parents that are on those groups, it's because the kids are still stuck, right? And so you're talking to people that are homebound, that are really not doing well. I want you to also talk to the people that have recovered, that are out living their life.
Yes, I think that's
they're
huge.
not on the group,
Absolutely.
So just know it's a skewed sample size if you're on a group for mast cell issues or POTS or whatever. No, it's not everybody, because the people who healed and got better, they're at work and they're not on there. So
I think having success stories is huge because I think we want to focus on that. We want to reject some of these diagnoses that people are placing on us and just stay focused on getting better and whatever I need to do right now and one step at a time, one day at a time, and that's how we get. But people absolutely heal. I mean, I remember a year ago, or maybe more now, being in my nervous system training and hearing people be like, yeah, I used to have anxiety really bad and it was as bad as mine was. And being like, I healed. And I would be like, pause. Like, can you say that one more time? Because I've never even heard that. I thought I'm going to have to be on a medication or this. And that is giving us a new perception, something new to relate to in the same old story that we've been living. And that's how we change. We change through relationship, through new experiences, not assumptions and stories that are outdated. And in that, I think it's time to wrap up. One thing you said was, people looking for the success stories that are looking in the chat rooms and how social media is, a benefit because people can kind of trust and see. So I'm curious if somebody's listening to this podcast, they see themselves in some of the conversations that we've had and they're interested in reaching out. Number one, highly recommend it. Kate's awesome. She's the best. We're here in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. I don't know any functional medicine doctor that's going to be better. Got my stamp of approval in my 10 years of experience. And certainly we'll leave her contact information in the comments. But for people that are listening and watching, can you tell us how to find you? If they're interested in working with you, how to go about that?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, thefunctionalmedicinecenter.org, you can also see a video I made on there just kind of about the basics, so you can kind of get a sense of how we would work. But if you listen to the interview, you know. And then we also have a YouTube channel, the Functional Medicine Center of Durham, where we have a lot of previous classes, because we do try to build a lot of community. So we have a lot of events going on. And what you would do though on the website is you would actually fill out our medical intake form. There is one for me or Sophie, our nurse practitioner, that is just the general medical intake form. There's another one that's a pediatric intake form. And then we also have we do like PRP and ozone injections in the joints and stem cell injections in the joints. And that's Josh. So that's the procedure intake form. So if you feel like you just have a sports injury and you just want to come see Josh, that's also available. You don't have to be a patient of mine or Sophie's to do that. So I just want to plug Josh a little bit because he's really good at what he does. So maybe you should have him.
We call Josh MacGyver. He can fix anything.
Exactly. If your shoulder's being weird, come see Josh.
Absolutely.
But in terms of me and Sophie, do the medical intake form, not the procedure intake form. And then
what about social media? Where are you at on social media?
So Primitive Family is my Instagram. I still haven't really made it Functional Medicine Center, but that's fine. That's Primitive Family.
Was that was the name before you changed it to Functional Medicine Center, right? Yeah.
Yep.
You lived on Primitive Drive? Something like that?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I still do. Yep. And then the other thing is on Facebook, it's the Functional Medicine Center of Durham. So, but I think everything's kind of linked. Once you find one, you'll be able to find the others too. So,
yeah. And if people have questions, about this and about anything we talked about, leave it in the comments section below, and we'll definitely be happy to get back to you.
Yes. And we also do 15-minute discovery calls. So if you're just not sure, and you don't want to fill out the intake form is secure, but if you don't want to fill it out, that's okay. Just do a 15-minute discovery call and find out more about us.
Awesome. Kate, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome chatting with you as always. If you've hung out this long with us, thank you. This concludes season 1 of the Rooted Conversations podcast. We're saving the best for last with Kate.
Thanks, Mitch.
Give us a like, give us a comment, share with anybody, and we'll see you again next for season 2. Kate, thank you so much for coming on.
Have a good day.
See you. Bye. See you, everybody.